Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi amma ba'du. I greet the Mali students, guests, listeners. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to our Sunday morning ta'aleem. This is the early morning ta'aleem. We're looking at today the ritual month of Ramadan. I'm taking a little shift from the book, The Treasure Under the Wall, to make this presentation concerning the ritual month of Ramadan. Looking at the verse 7:142. Let me write that. 7:142. Yes. And we're still going to take a look at Balaga and a commentary on the verse. Let me jump right in. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Let me get my pen here. Wa'atna Musa, we appointed, and we appointed Moses Thalathina Laylatan, 30 nights. And at Amamnaha, and we completed it bi'ashrin, with 10. Fatamma miqatu rabbihi, the period of time of his Lord completed arba'ina laylatan, 40 nights. So looking at the science of al-bayan, which is one of the sciences, of the three sciences of Balaga: al-ma'ani, al-bayan, and al-badi'. The verse is primarily hakikatun. It's primarily literal. The verse itself is primarily literal in its core meanings, while it employs a subtle numerical and temporal style that can be discussed under each ilm al-bayani principle. And the principles of ilm al-bayan is tashbih, istiara, majaz, and kinaya. We'll have a discussion of the verse under those four principles. However, keep in mind, or you will be reminded that it's literal in its presentation, the verse. The first is tashbih. The meaning of tashbih, I put here for the students as a reminder, and this will be a good presentation to go back and listen to. is grasping one meaning by the means of another, due to the existence of a point of resemblance. There's a point of resemblance. It's you taking one thing and using it for the means of another, giving the meaning of another, due to their resemblance between the two of them. They have a shared attribute, as we have been saying. Whether with an explicit particle, whether it has a ka or mithla, what have you, that shows a likeness, or without one, it still could be presented as a tashbih. Tashbih is the word for simile. Simile. One thing is similar to another, that they could be used. You can use them to express a meaning by using one meaning by means of another. In this verse, there is no explicit simile, according to the scholars. Tashbihun musarrah, no explicit simile. There is no like or as showing in terms of it being constructed using ka or mithla. The wording arba'ina laylatan or thalathina laylatan is numerically literal, not explicitly comparing one entity to another. Now, some rhetoricians, they allow speaking of an implicit comparison between the completion of term and a fully rounded, perfected period. For example, the state of Fatama Mikatu Rabbihi Arba'ina Laylatan, and the time of his Lord is a completion, has completed 40 nights. This evokes the image of something brought to full measure, but this remains the realm of taswirun. Taswirun is depiction, imaging, or picturing, rather than a formal technical tashbih. What I'm going to present in the commentary is sort of a taswir, looking at nature, completion of the term, full rounded, perfected period of the purification, a recurring purification of nature and enlightenment to a fully rounded period of maturity, a state of maturity. Looking at nature. So from a strict Ibn al-Bayani, the science of rhetorical clarification / figurative expression. So from a strict Ilm al-Bayani standpoint, the verse does not contain a canonical tashbih. There's no likeness is understood conceptually nor structurally. But as he's saying, it could be used in terms of imaging. Keep that in mind. The next istiara. Istiara is a word in meaning other than that for which it was originally coined. Other than that for which it was originally coined. Due to a relation of resemblance. Together with a contextual indicator called qareen in Arabic that prevents intending the original meaning. It's a word that you're using, but the word you're using, the intended original meaning of that word is not intended. The original meaning is not intended. It's used to relate to something else. If I can try to make it clear for you. Perhaps it was clear the first time. And this is very important when, as students, you are studying Raga. When you're looking at the dictionary of Raga, it may give you an original meaning. In giving you the original meaning, it may give you some form of pictorial presentation of that meaning. Don't throw it out. Some of you have the tendency of throwing it out because when you're looking up a word, you want it to say what you want it to say. Then see how that original meaning is used or takes a shift in the Quranic contextual meaning. It will take a shift. Then as students, you can go back from the Qur'an and use it as an istiara, as a metaphor. Istiara is, the meaning is simply the metaphor. The core verbs, continuing, wa'atna, atmamnaha, and tamma are the core verbs. And the nouns are mikatu rabbihi, thalathina laylatan, arba'ina laylatan. The verbs being, we appointed, we completed, and it complete. These two are the same in origin. Are all in their hakikiyun, real, actual, literal, temporal and contractual senses. A real promise, a real counted night, and a real appointed time. A real promise, a real counted night, and arba'ina layla, a real appointed time. The appointed time, 40 nights. They're all real in what they're saying. But remember, every verse has its explicit meaning and it has its implicit meaning. Now, some scholars have pointed to Fatamamikatu Rabbihi as having taswiriyun, depiction or imagery or picturing. that has a taswiriyan flavor. Because at tamamu, completion, is used for something that reaches perfection and completion, which can project the image of a measured term as if it were an object being fashioned to completion. Like clay, black clay. Black clay we could conjure up as an object. We can make an image or a picture of black clay. It's not in the verse, but black clay being a picture that we could use to be a metaphor for nature being fashioned to completion. Yet, linguistically speaking now, tamam mikatu is an established literal usage in Arabic for the end of a prescribed period, so it does not cross the threshold into technical istiara. It's not a technical metaphor in the verse, but it does have this taswiri flavor, pictorial flavor. So according to this verse, it is taken to be free of formal istiara. Its vividness derives from precise numerical structuring rather than metaphorical transfer. Yes. And looking at the science, the principle of istiara. Al-majaz is figurative usage, employing a word in other than the meaning for which it was originally coined, due to a certain relation together with a contextual indicator, a qareen, that prevents the real meaning, and it is more general than metaphor. Similar to metaphor, but more general than metaphor in general in usage, figurative. So the numbers and time expressions themselves are literal. Once again, Thalathina Laylatan, 30 actual nights, identified by many scholars, many of the commentators of Qur'an. They say it's Dhul Qa'dah, the month of Dhul Qa'dah. The 30 nights is the month of Dhul Qa'dah. That's what the scholars say. The Qur'an doesn't say it. Or, in this case, in our presentation, the month of Ramadan. Now, I know I'm not going to have time to present everything in detail to you. Some things I have presented over the years. So you kind of have to remember that. Then you have the Ashrin, 10 additional actual nights. The first 10 of Thul-Hijjah. This is, many of the commentators will say this 10 is Thul-Hijjah. That's the month of the Hajj, the first 10 days of Hajj. Arba'ina Laylatan, the total 40 nights. Fadlakatun, a summary or brief concluding synopsis. The total 40 nights that restates the sum for emphasis. 30 plus 10 is restating this completion for emphasis and removal of ambiguity. So we can make a picture of clay being formed. The first 30 nights of purifying the clay. The next 10 nights is enlightening, bringing out the enlightenment that's in the clay, which reaches a full maturing period of 40. For example, however, this would be tasweerun, not majazun. The stylistic device in وَأَتْمَمْنَاهَا بِعَشْرٍ فَتَمَّ مِيقَاتُ رَبِّهِ 40 لَيْلَةً. We completed it with 10. Thus, the time of his Lord completed 40 nights. This is a bayani numerical clarification, not a majazun aqliyun or a majazun mursal. Once again, however, it may have the flavor of tasweer. So classical authors such as Zamakhshari or Ar-Razi, these are, well, they both have their commentaries of the Qur'an and more, especially Zamakhshari. They highlight the benefit of mentioning the 40 explicitly to dispel the possible misunderstanding that the extra 10 are internal to the 30. So they're saying in their commentary, Zamakhshari and Ar-Razi, that this style, using this style of the Quran, you have 30 plus 10, and then it's like you're repeating it. It's being repeated as 40. It's done to be sure that the 10 is not included in the 30. For example, you may say 30 nights of Ramadan with 10 be ashrin, with 10, you may think of the last 10 nights. So they're saying, rather than think this 10 is part of the 30, which the last 10 nights of Ramadan is part of the 30, the hint I'm giving, if you're counting the last 10 nights, if you're counting the last 10, when you begin, you have to have an idea of how many nights you're counting in order for you to count the last 10. So if you're counting 30 nights, then you have the last 10. But as the Makshari and Arazi is saying that this language is used, Arba'ina Laylatan is used so that you don't take the 10 that they're internal to the 30. Therefore, the 10 is outside of the 30. You have the 30 plus the 10. Which is a rhetorical ta'keed, strengthening, emphasis, ta'keed, not figurative transfer. Now, in the commentary, I'm considering, let's say I'm not violating the Sunnah, nor am I violating what some of the scholars have said, nor am I literally quoting scholars. Hum rijalun wa nahnu rijalun. Hum rijalun wa nahnu rijalun. Thus, in terms of majaz, the verse functions as hakikatun bayaniyatun, meaning that it's non-figurative. It's non-figurative. It's a literal usage with rhetorical analysis. Within the rhetorical analysis, it's literal. He just saying with ta'keed, with emphasis. So no majaz pattern here, mursal or aqliyun, is technically established in the wording itself. The last of the four principles, al-kinaya, which is an expression by which the necessary implication of its meaning is intended, while it remains permissible to intend the original meaning as well. There's an implied meaning that's intended, but it's permissible that the original meaning is intended as well, meaning that it could be literal, but yet have other implications. In the absence of any indicator, there is no Qur'an diverting from it. So this goes with the saying that the verse itself, though it is original in meaning, is explicit in meaning that you can take it literal, yet there may also be an implied meaning. Every verse has its original meaning, its explicit original meaning, and every verse also carries an implied meaning. The mention of Arba'ina Laylatan can be read as a kinaya an at-takidi wa tamami taklif تمام التكليف والتهيئة is a kinaya, an allusion indicating emphasis, completeness of obligation, and full preparedness. That's what we said in Arabic. It could be, Arba'ina could be read as that. The 40 nights could be indicating emphasis, that we just explained, 30 plus 10. We say it again. Completeness of obligation, the completed period, and the full preparedness. The maturity. 40 in Semitic and Islamic usage often signals a fully matured period of preparation or transformation, as we're given the example of clay. The full period of the clay being formed to a state of maturity, though here it remains literal as a count. But this 40 often signals a fully matured period. I want you to see that. Other scholars are saying this, not me. The verse, by explicitly tolling the nights, alludes to the completeness and gravity of this divine appointment. Keep this in mind. Go back and listen to the recording. This 40 is a divine appointment without stating tahyiyatu. The preparation has been completed or full readiness has been achieved directly. It's not stating it directly, however, it could be implied. Likewise, Mikatu Rabbihi, the time of his Lord, is Hakika, is literal in meaning. The appointed time set by his Lord, Mikatu Rabbihi. But it serves as kinaya an sharafil makami wa idha mil maw'idi ma'alahi. It serves as a kinaya an allusion indicating the nobility of the station and the greatness of the appointed meeting with Allah. Because a fixed, divinely determined mikatun, appointed time, fixed time, meeting point, implies the honor of intimate discourse and the seriousness of the covenant. Next. Remember this as we go through the commentary. So the scholars continue. This is a conglomeration of scholars on the subject of Balagha. If one seeks Bayani classification, the strongest figure present is Kinaya. The literal numbers are mikat and mikat stand while pointing to necessary concomitants, such as completeness of preparation, firmness of covenant, and elevation of the prophetic station. Now, keep all of that in mind, because I'm kind of, for the time we have this morning, presenting my argument, we may say. Now let's look at a Warithian reading. Before we have the Akbario Warithian, this is a Warithian reading. Ibn Arabi is not included. The reading or the thinking of Ibn Arabi is not researched and included in this writing. This is from Imam W.D. Muhammad, but it's not literally from Imam W.D. Muhammad. It's not a quotation of W.D. Muhammad, but it is based upon the readings, the works of Imam W. Muhammad, extracted from the various lectures or writings that have been published. So I coined it as a Warithian reading. That's a coined name that I have given it. So this verse discusses Moses. It discusses Moses being appointed for 30 nights, then adding 10 to complete 40, which is also in the discussion. Think about everything that we've said in the Balaga discussion, the Al-Bayan discussion. This is viewed not just as a historical, literal detail, but an esoteric representation of the growth and completion of human moral and intellectual life. $30 plus 10 for the completion of 40. The growth and completion of human moral and intellectual life. We could say, given a pictorial of clay being formed, black clay. It can be understood as a symbolic pattern that recurs in human development. Recurs, it recurs in human development, particularly in how Allah elevates leaders and communities from ignorance to conscious, responsible living. The number 30 symbolizes the purity achieved in human nature. This is a particular Warithian expression. 30 symbolize the purity achieved in human nature and through revealed guidance, particularly in the figure of Jesus, the Christ, or Muslim nature. That's the purity achieved. We call it the Christ or Muslim nature, as well as in the context of a fully developed human community. It reflects a human will and nature that remains pure from birth into maturity. It keeps its purity. This original purity can persist into adult prophetic responsibilities, especially when it is fully realized in a public mission. Every child is born with this pure nature. Understand that. Every child is born with this pure nature. However, the complete test and confirmation of that purity occur when an individual reaches a stage of full responsibility and leadership. The Christ/Muslim nature is thus no longer just potential, but has been proven, disciplined, and manifested through struggle. Purity that has endured testing and has become what the community as a whole is destined to achieve: a mature, ethically stable purity. That's the 30. The 10 symbolizes the intellect that embodies full and balanced responsibility. It represents a harmonious integration of the 5 outer senses and the 5 inner spiritual psychic powers, functioning together as a disciplined mind in the service of Allah. The soul is the foundation of the intellect. The soul is the foundation of the intellect. And true enlightenment occurs when the intellectual drive emerges from the soul, rather than merely from the mind. This process reflects the pure nature within us. The pure nature within us, where 10 signifies an intellect fully eliminated from within. Yes. Uh, emerging from this original nature, this intellect, this pure nature, rather than solely informed by external data. That we could say that we all have in us that prophetic soul, that prophetic spirit. We have the mountain of Moses and the mountain of Arafat, which symbolize the journey of intellect as it ascends from the base of common thinking to the pinnacle of clear, binding logic. This journey then returns to apply that logic within the community. This is the pictorial we're given of Moses, and this is a pictorial that we're given of the pilgrims on Mount Arafat. This process reflects how laws are internalized and transformed into a just social order. In this framework, 10 represents the complete cycle of human growth from raw sensation to enlightened intellect and trustworthy leadership. A completion of 10. Ensuring that every aspect of human experience aligns with Allah's plan. The number 40 now signifies a stage of complete ripening. Consider what we're saying in the commentary and look at also the Balagha principles that I'm not violating. I'm not in violation of scholars, nor am I in violation of the Sunnah if you read the Sunnah well. So 40 is, in other words, in this Warifian reading, it's not the only one saying this, signifies a stage of complete ripening, a point at which a person, mission, or community has undergone a thorough testing process, and is now prepared to bear its destined responsibilities with clarity and stability. This concept is reflected in various contexts, such as 40 years spent in the wilderness, or the 40 days of fasting and pilgrimage, 30 days plus 10. It symbolizes a complete cycle of trial during which weaknesses are not only exposed, but also purified and disciplined rather than simply punished. When revelation occurs at the age of 40, like that of Prophet Muhammad, the praise and peace be upon him, it is bestowed upon a nature that has already been fully tested. A community that has endured 40 years of slavery, or we could add another zero if you want, 400 years of slavery, or another zero, 4,000 years of slavery. This 4, it's the 40. But here we're looking at the 4 and the 10. 40 years of slavery is symbolic. 400 years of slavery is symbolic. I don't want to digress into the 400. Nationalism, slavery, nationalism, confusion, and reform. A community that has endured nationalism, confusion, and reform can emerge with a more universal and balanced understanding of the Qur'an and reality, much as an individual who reaches 40 with a well-developed intellect. A community can, just as an individual can. Now, in conclusion, what we're doing here is extracting from what we have what has been presented in the commentary and in the Balaga principles as well, or the Bayani principles as well. This concept 30 plus 10 for a completion of 40. We're extracting from this verse and express it in ritual form. We're taking from the verse and putting it in ritual form so that we will remember. Remember what we were saying last week? Those who sit at the table of ritualism without understanding cannot appreciate the food. So we're going to express it in ritual form, by sighting the first crescent moon and counting 30 nights, culminating in the celebration of Eid al-Fitr on the 30th day, representing the purification of the original nature, the recurring purification of nature. This practice signifies the recurring purification of our nature. Subsequently, on the 10th day of Thul-Hijjah, we add 10 to it. After returning from Mount Arafat, on the 10th day, the 9th day is on Mount Arafat. That night is the 10th night. The night is counted before the day. So you have the ninth day on Mount Arafat. That night is the 10th night. The day is the after is the 10th day, returning from Mount Arafat. We expressed in the presentation. We celebrate Eid al-Adha, which symbolizes the completion of our journey. The Eid al-Adha, that's the recurring of the greater light, the intellect, the purification of the intellect, emerging out of that pure nature. Symbolizes the completion of our journey marked by 40. We put this in the ritual form. Hum rijalun wa nahnu rijalun. The month of Ramadan is a calendar month used for telling time. We can say that. It is also a ritual month. Understand that. It's a ritual month, and the days of the two may not always align. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum.